Perfect. Thank you. So we put this session together because we have been working on thesis mentoring individually and collectively for a good while. And the idea of having this journey from personal support, and when we talk about mentoring, we always talk about the idea that it is person-centered, that it's very tailored to the individual needs of the mentee that comes into the program. And we want to focus on how that, but cumulatively over years and over lots and lots of instances and lots of data, can actually help us to start to support culture change. I'm Kate Guccione. I'm head of research culture and research development at Glasgow. And Elaine, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, please. My name is Elaine Gourlay. I'm the Research Culture Specialist for Communities and Collegiality at the University of Glasgow.
And if you're wondering who invented Elaine's mega mouthful job title, it was indeed me. So yeah, I like people's job titles to say exactly what they do. And part of our communities and collegiality approach at Glasgow is to have a suite of different mentoring programs to work from. This is just one of them, thesis mentoring. And in thesis mentoring, PhD researchers who are actively writing their thesis are paired with our postdoctoral researchers who are looking to help support. They've been there, they've done that, they've got some things to know. And we'll walk you through what that looks like today. So both the video that we'll create and the slide deck, which we'll send to people who attended today, are open access. So they've got a Creative Commons license, and you'll be able to have a copy of these to use and share alike license. If you don't know what that means, please just drop us a line. But it means that you can give these slides to other people. You can use them in your teaching, but it's a non-commercial license. So please don't sell them to anyone. We've got four parts for the session today. One is to talk about thesis mentoring, the design. So how we put the program together, what the key design features are that make it successful, and what that looks like in practice. The second part is to talk about the impact journey, how we took the data from that and how we made changes at organizational and at sector level. Part three is you will get the chance to discuss, what did you make of our design? What resonated with you? What would you reflect on? And how might you improve that design? And we'll put people in groups to do that. And then once you've got lots of questions for us, lots of things you didn't understand, or lots of things you'd like more detail on, come back and ask us about it, and we'll answer that in the fourth part of the session today. So our first part today is the design, and I'm going to hand over to Elaine to walk you through that.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Kay. So I'm going to talk through some of the design rationale for thesis mentoring and how we set up the program as well. So first of all, the why. Why thesis mentoring? Writing a thesis is hard. Many people will will know that if you've been there or if it's something that you're facing up ahead. And research had shown that coaching can provide a space for having that critical reflection and that discussion on your writing, and that can support progress for PGRs. So the program itself, as Kay said, pairs PGR thesis writers who are mentees with postdoctoral thesis mentors, and they have discussions that support the mentee to think about how can they get into that writing rhythm, how can they get that motivation to keep going with that thesis and break it down into a project. But it also supports them to reflect on themselves and how they can build up habits that support and suit them as individuals as well. Thinking about our postdoctoral thesis mentors, so that is anyone at the University of Glasgow who's part of our research professional staff or our research and academic staff who have doctorates. So the reason we thought it was important to access our postdoctorate members of staff was that supervisor training and supervisor support, there was calls for that to be writing centred and for researcher development to focus on the experiences of those researchers as well, and to think about the lived experience that they bring and how that will impact their progress as well. So by pairing these two individuals together, we allow our postdoctoral thesis mentors to think about their own approaches to academic writing, think about their leadership skills and progress and develop in that area as well, and also have hands-on practical experience of supervision to develop themselves as supervisors. So the programme itself, we put out a call to our PGRs, so the thesis writers, our mentees, are self-referred and join the programme at a time that is meaningful for them. And they get to have that confidential conversation with a mentor who is outside of their subject area, someone who brings that little bit of professional distance as well. We bring everyone together for the training, so everything is open and transparent, and the expectations of the programme are set out really clearly to every participant at the beginning as well. And when we set them off on that matching journey, we provide them with some toolkits and support to go ahead with that as well. So just thinking a bit about actually what does that process involve then? So I started to touch on that a little bit there. Initially, we recruit our mentees and our new mentors. So we put out a call to our research professionals, our postdoctoral research staff, and our PGR population as well to join the programme at set points through the year. I say recruiting new mentors because we also invite our previous mentors to return to the programme to opt in for an upcoming round and indicate that they are available and interested in participating again. Anyone who's new to the programme then comes on a training workshop that I deliver. Everyone is together in that same space to talk about the principles of mentoring and to try on some of the conversation styles as well. So they all get brought together for that 2-hour training session, and then I will match the mentees and mentors together. As I said, we're doing that matching outside of the mentees' discipline. So we're thinking of someone who's not there to comment on the content of their thesis, the data they're generating, or the research they're doing. It's bringing that personalised focus on their approach to writing and thinking about habits that can work for that individual mentee as well. Those partners meet then for a period of 16 weeks. So we recommend that they meet about 8 times, about once every fortnight, across a structured period of 18 weeks. And then we bring the programme to an official close at the end of those 16 weeks. And I invite everyone in the programme to complete an evaluation. We're going to talk a little bit later about some of the data that we get from that evaluation process as well. So I think I'm going to hand over to Kate to talk through about the key factors of success.
Thank you so much, Elaine. So you've given us a really nice rundown of the process of how we recruit people. It's important that people come in at the right time, they self-select to be there, and that they get matched outside of their discipline. And I do think that's one of the most important things. But there's other key factors in what I think makes this program successful after running it for just over 10 years now. And that is training for mentees and mentors that's more than generic models and skills. So rather than a models focused approach, so, for example, if you've attended any mentoring or coaching training, you might have come in and sat down and they said, we're going to start with the GROW model. Actually, what we start with is the ethos of coaching and mentoring, what the entire point of it is, where it's come from, and really giving people the tool bag in which to put their toolkit. So we might later then teach them different kinds of models, different kinds of theories, different kinds of approaches to put into that bag. But I think it's really, really important to build the bag first, to actually show people the origin story of why dialogic learning and why having somebody who is a neutral sounding board can really support thinking, and the links between critical thinking and the opportunity to speak out loud, to speak about yourself, to speak to a neutral party. And show them the evidence on that. So I think training that is in depth, that's interactive for them, and that's more than an advice-based model. So whilst they are mentors, they have been through the thesis writing process, they're not there to talk about themselves with the mentee. They're not there to talk so much about their experience as they are to coach, to focus on that mentee's experience, to ask them how it's going for them, to look at what they need. So I think getting that training piece right is really important. And I'll show you as we get to the impact part where that training was developed from. It's been massively important over the years to define the role of the mentor and to set really distinct boundaries for that create security and confidence for the mentors to go into that practice. And it creates that kind of security and confidence for the mentee to know what they're getting. The matched training idea that Elaine talked about, we actually train mentors and mentees separately just because of the different numbers incoming. You know, if you think we're retaining a lot of mentors that don't have to retrain, we might work with a small group of mentors year on year and a group of 90 to 100 incoming mentees on a program. So we work with them in different sessions, but clearly matched. So everyone has the same information about what will and won't happen to them in that mentoring room. I don't want anybody to be walking into a situation where they're not sure what the mentor is going to say or how they're going to be. And those really distinct boundaries are around they're not there to supervise that mentee. The mentee cannot use this as a way to get an alternative supervisor. The mentor has a role to play and a defined role, and that is separate and complementary to the role of the supervisor. So if the supervisor is there to really talk to them and support them with decisions around, you know, the entire topic of the project, the methodologies that they might have used, the analyses they might have used, the literature that gets included, the style of writing, the disciplinary conventions for that thesis. The mentor is there to talk to them about their relationship with writing, how they feel about writing, when they're at their best with writing, what helps them to feel confident. They're not there to do the same job. And it's been really, really important to make that distinction, not only so the mentors know what they're doing, not only so the mentees know what they can expect, but so the supervisors can feel confident as well. You know, if a supervisor's thinking, well, is the mentor going to say, do something that I've already told them not to do? If they don't feel confident, they don't recommend it to their students. And a really big factor in making this program as successful as it can be is that supervisors know it's there and they know that they can signpost to it safely and securely because everybody knows what that role is around. What really helps to define those boundaries, and something I really won't yield on however many times it gets suggested, is we match people outside their discipline. So we'll tend to try and match people within their research paradigm, you know, so if they're a STEM researcher, if they come from a positivist point of view, if they're perhaps social sciences researcher, or maybe coming at this from an arts or practice-based position, we try and match them with someone who can understand their research paradigm, but who does not understand their data, their analyses, the types of research question they might be answered, doesn't understand the specificities of the research that they're doing. And that really helps, firstly, to not get bogged down in the details of the thesis, but to really keep it focused on productivity, relationship, progress, monitoring, tracking, you know, doing more of what works and doing less of what doesn't work in that solutions-focused way. It also spreads the workload. And what I mean by that is, for example, we might have lots and lots of PhD researchers coming from our STEM subjects because we have lots of those at the university, and not so many coming from social sciences and arts. But if we look at the concentrations of our postdocs and where they're available, they might be in different patches across the university. So everybody who is a postdoc who wants to be a mentor will get the opportunity to support a PGR who's writing, even if they might not naturally have met one within their own department circles, let's say, within their own school communities. They do get to meet somebody as part of this. And also, when we've got a huge influx of people coming from one specific area, we might not have the postdocs in that area to be doing that day-to-day supervision. But within this program, that we are able to match them. So it kind of spreads the workload across the university and makes sure that wherever the mentees come from, wherever the postdocs come from, they're able to be matched together. I think having expert support and supervision that helps resolve issues has been key. And in this context, on the context of point 4, I mean mentoring and coaching supervision. So having people design mentoring programs who understand mentoring, who understand the discipline, who understand the ethos, who are qualified in that, and who are able to help people disentangle what good practice is, who are working with ethical best practice frameworks and understand what the role of a mentor looks like, and are there to help people untangle areas where they might feel that a boundary is being crossed, or they're not sure of the black, white, or grey shades of how to approach a particular conversation or a particular problem that they encounter with a mentee or mentor, I think is really part of it. And I think within this, especially because we've got people who are new to mentoring coming into this program, lots and lots of different kinds of things coming, should I be saying this? My mentee has asked me to proofread their thesis. Should I be doing that? The answer is always no. But like particular questions around, does this count as contact time if my mentee is on a visa? And we can help them work through that with the appropriate departments who need to know and need to weigh in on that. So just having us there to help them resolve these ethical tensions and dilemmas, I think is part of the success of the program. And then an evaluation design, which I'll talk about in a second, that enables learning. So not just learning for the mentors, though they will be able to, understand from reading the reports what other mentors have got out of it, what mentees have got out of it, something that helps their practice. It actually helps us learn as an organization about the two populations, the mentee population and the mentor population, through reading why they joined the program, what they got out of the program, where they got stuck. We really are able to learn a lot about where thesis writers get stuck and how these kinds of conversations can unstick them. And we can use that in lots and lots of ways, which I'll come on to talk about. So just to walk you through our evaluation design, because when we talk in a minute about how we use the data, I thought it would be good for you to have, to be read into what the data looks like, what kinds of data we collect, and why it's been important in order to make impact from the program. So we do ask people their reasons for joining the program. And for mentees, this really helped us design the kinds of training and to understand where people may or may not get stuck. And their reasons for joining can range from things like, I've just started writing. I want to avail myself of every single piece of support that's available to me because I'm just keen to do my very best. And we can have people kind of in the middle, like, I've started writing, I'm really stuck. This is a real slog. I'm really stressed. And we can have people at the end of their time, sort of say, I'm writing to a deadline, I've already had an extension, I just don't know what to do, I'm really stressed. And having that context for why people join the program helps us to know which mentor to match them with, how to support their mentor to do the best job, and the likelihood of there being a coaching success. And I'll share with you today that I think people in that first two boxes are going to get more than people who are in that very, very last stage and very stressed out of it, because what they'll find is they don't even have time to engage with the meetings. And it really brings me to a key point I always make about mentoring is that it's not an ambulance. It's not for emergencies. Mentoring is a piece of learning we do together that's a piece of considered critical thinking. If we put people in situations where we expect them to dig the mentee out of a hole right at the last minute, all we're doing is creating a lot of stress for people. It's less likely to work at that point. So I would share that with you. So we ask people why they're here to join the program. We also ask mentors why they're here to join the program, because it's really good to understand who's here because they're a mentor, they think mentor is important, they've had a mentor before, they fully understand the value that mentoring can bring. Who's here because it looks like a great CV opportunity and they want to be able to say in the future that they've done some mentoring. And they are distinct between those things. And who's here because, they didn't have that mentor when they needed, they think it's part of their the collegiality and the service that they should offer as a developing academic. And they just are curious and want to learn the skill set. So understanding our populations helps us know how to support them to do their job. In that final evaluation, we ask people, how well were the defined aims of the program met? So if we say one of the things this program will do is give you time to think, did it give you time to think? If we say one of the aims of this program is that it will help you to make a concrete plan that you can monitor and track towards the end point of your PhD, how well was that met? So we can understand kind of as a general population, what went on within those conversations. Was it more about the planning, tracking and monitoring? Was it more about the emotional, affective side of it, overcoming stress and being able to work through complexity? And we can understand that. Of course, we ask people to list off their common benefits that they've experienced, and we can ask them to choose from a list of all that apply. And that list you'll see soon when Elaine presents some of the data to you. We asked them, in your own words, what worked well and what worked not so well, just so we can get that qualitative feel for all these tick boxes we've asked people to press. What was it about the conversation? What was it about the opportunity? What was it about the setup of the program that enabled you to move forward with your thesis? And point 5 is that we then, whereas points 1 to 4 are confidential within our form, we ask people if they would like their mentor to be publicly recognized. Mentees can write that around 100 words or so, and they can put the mentor in the Mentor Hall of Fame, which is something that we use to celebrate mentoring, to give people who are entering the program a feel for the kinds of things that go on, and that's something that we can share publicly and celebrate the mentors who were nominated. And we can use it in advertising materials so people can read about some of the successes and understand what kind of learning and development activity mentoring is. So thinking of all these different types of data is really helped us to learn about these two populations and their role in academic writing and academic thesis writing, what they provide and what they provide to each other through that. So I'm going to start really by talking a little bit about the impact journey. I won't labor this because you'll be able to have the slides afterwards, but I wanted you to kind of understand the origin story of the program, where it came from, and where we applied data at different points in order to make changes. So way back in 2013, I was doing my master's degree in coaching, mentoring, and leadership development. And as part of my dissertation for that, I wanted to understand how mentoring could help the thesis writing journey. So I coached 40 different thesis writers over 3 sessions each. And if you're thinking, that sounds like a lot, it felt like a lot. It really felt like a lot. Probably overfaced myself for a master's dissertation, but there was such rich, lovely data that came from that. At that point, I'd not conceived that there would be a thesis mentoring program. I just wanted to coach some writers and see how coaching supported them. But I was able to then use that data, use what I learned about where people get stuck, how they get stuck, how relationships enable them, how supervisory relationships can disable that writing journey. How not being taught how to do a literature review properly can really get people to stall. So I really learned a lot about thesis writing and where people get stuck with thesis writing. And I used that in 2014 after I submitted my dissertation to develop some mentor training and to pilot the first 10 pairs in thesis mentoring. And I followed that really, really closely. At the end of that, I interviewed all of the mentors and all of the mentees to find out what they got out of it, and then reanalyzed that data, which really showed that there was a clear positive impact for mentors, not only on their ability to mentor within the program, but on how they talked about their ability to supervise PhDs, the skills they had and the confidence they had to approach a PhD student who was stuck with writing. And lots of people reported that they felt they would be a better supervisor, or they had become a better supervisor, or they'd been able to talk about their time on the program when applying for academic jobs. And that was really like a light bulb moment for me. I was like, oh, wait, this isn't just about getting writers to write. This isn't just about training mentors to mentor. This is actually very, very key professional development in the academic journey for the postdocs who will go on to supervise. Spoiler alert, lots and lots of them now are professors, lots of those original mentors who will and have continued to tell me how much that formative experience shaped their entire approach to how they've developed their students since then. So based on those interviews, we scaled up the program. And this is way back when I was working at the University of Sheffield. And we were seeing about 150 matched pairs per year. And the results for the mentees and mentors held. So I certainly didn't go and interview every single person who finished the mentoring program once we operated at those numbers. But I used the themes that arose from the interview data to create those tick boxes on the form. I use them to develop those categories of likely positive outcomes that people would have. We then used the data from that to develop mentor toolkits, how to unstick a thesis writer, how to remotivate a PhD student who's really lost their way at the end of the journey, and the first kind of output, I suppose, from that was a thesis handbook called How to Write Your Thesis, Getting to the End. I wrote that with Jerry Wellington and put some of the learning into there. And then that handbook kind of became a new mentor tool that we could use. That program later became the centerpiece. So we had a new supervisor development program. So for aspiring supervisors or brand new supervisors, what we said was, instead of coming on a set of 4 or 5 different workshops to theoretically learn about mentoring, we're going to actually pair you with a student. We're going to make that the center of your learning journey. We're going to give you some practical experience of what it's like to support a stressed researcher, to support somebody who's at the end. And we're going to give you coaching and mentoring tools in order to do that. And that became the real core part of the supervisor development program. Because of the learning we'd had, because of we now thinking, actually mentoring is a really good way to learn to supervise. And look at all of these people who are in non-official supervisory roles. These are postdocs, these are research professionals who have PhDs. We need to start thinking about what this looks like and how to accredit people for this. And so I approached UK Council for Graduate Education, who had developed, and I'd been one of the peer reviewers on their development of their Supervisor Award, which is a kind of professional benchmarking award. You can become an official registered supervisor with the UKCG. And I asked them if we could co-develop an associate level award, kind of a half level award for people who aren't officially supervising on formal teams, but yet are doing this great degree of day-to-day supervision work. So we used the evidence that came from thesis mentoring to create what that award looked like, and to write the draft and to work with some of the researchers who'd been thesis mentors to test and pilot the development of that. And that because now we're talking in terms of these expanded networks or expanded pedagogies for PhD supervision, all of that work had a very strong influence on the publication that I wrote with Soren Bengtsson, Deli Elliott, and Sophie Kobayashi, which is the hidden curriculum in doctoral education. Because it became really, really aware for me that not only was thesis writing a hidden curriculum, but learning to supervise was a hidden curriculum. Lots of unwritten rules, lots of unspoken ways to do it, lots of lack of being able to access being able to supervise before you're stuck in that supervisor role and you just have to sink or swim. So it had a really strong impact on how we started to talk about doctoral pedagogy, doctoral learning, and to understand the range of ways people move through their academic careers. Now, having said that I would be very brief, I've just gone on and on and on there. So I'm going to hand back over to Elaine to talk about thesis mentoring, the journey after I moved to Glasgow and Elaine took on the project. Please come in, Elaine.
Fantastic. It's really nice to hear all of the pieces right back to the very origins. I like they call it the origin story of thesis mentoring. It's a nice way to look at it. Thinking about how we brought it into University of Glasgow. It was Kay that brought it into the University of Glasgow. It came with her, part of the package. So in November 2021, there was a pilot programme based on that model that Kay had developed with around 50 pairs of mentors and mentees. This was evaluated and then built into a programme that was launched in July 2022 with a biannual cadence. So we picked the time periods of July and January as key points in our calendar year to launch that programme, to put out those calls and to target thesis writers at points in the year that really kind of matter to them. You're not hitting the start of that academic year, you're targeting them at points where maybe it feels a little bit more comfortable as well. So we run the programme twice a year. We continue to match around 50 to 60 pairs in the first 3 rounds of the programme. All of this led to me coming to the University of Glasgow. It's founded my job as the research culture specialist, focusing on communities and collegiality, and mentoring is a key facet of my role. I do many other things, but mentoring is an absolute dream and is a very key part of what I do and what takes up my time. So I started here in January 2023 and took over the running of the programme there. And one of the first things I did when I came into post was to meet with people who were part of that programme, people who were engaging in that January 2023 round, be they brand new mentors, brand new mentees, or mentors who'd been part of multiple rounds of the programme. And so I invited everyone into a room, and we had some coffee and some cake and a chat about thesis mentoring and how they found it. And one of the key things that I gained from that experience was, well, a couple of things. First of all, some mentors reported to me that they were feeling like they were a little bit close to what the mentee was writing. They felt that there was constant questions around, can you have a look at my thesis? Can you proofread? Can you comment on this data? Am I doing this with the right approach? And they had found it quite difficult to straddle that boundary of what's the supervisor's role and what's a mentor's role. And they felt like they were constantly pushing back on mentees. Some mentors in the room had said, well, I've always been matched with someone who's in a very different subject area from me, and I've never had that issue. And so it made me sort of think about the distance between the discipline focuses of the mentor and the mentee. And I introduced an option into the programme then when we launched the next round in July 2023 to say, would you like to be matched with someone who's in your college, someone who has some awareness of the discipline that you're working in, or would you like to be matched with someone completely in a different area from you? So I tried to bring that into my matching when I'm making them from then on. And the other experience I had was a number of mentees came to speak to me, some of them privately at the end of that conversation session, to thank me for the care I had taken with their matches, because they were parents, they were carers, they were sort of early career researchers who were coming to that PhD later in their career, later in life. And they were matched with people who were very similar to themselves, and they really appreciated that. And it actually made me aware then that there was a little bit of serendipity just happening out there, and also that the opposite could be true, that people are perhaps not finding people as part of the programme in their matches that share those lived experiences and can really connect on the things that matter and the things that are really impacting that ability to progress with the thesis. So I started to ask then in July 2023 about the lived experiences of our mentors and our mentees, to see if there were things that we could bring in to support people to speak to someone who's, maybe got caring responsibilities while they're writing their thesis. I experienced that too, or I'm going through that now, and I understand how that can impact your ability to write and make progress towards that. So it added a little bit more nuance to that matching, a little bit more depth as well. In January 2024, we opened up our mentoring offering to include our research professionals, so those who work in research adjacent roles but have doctorates as well, to invite them to become mentors and share their experiences, as well as have that experience of interacting directly with a PGR and understanding what is influencing their ability to progress with the thesis, and making those connections across the wider university, breaking down those barriers between the academic and professional roles as well. I then, after we had done some talks at some conferences, I met some other people. Kay and I supported the translation of the programme into another institution. So we shared a lot of our materials, a lot of our learnings, and helped them devise a version of the programme that was suitable for their institution, which is significantly smaller than Glasgow as well. I've made a few other sort of tweaks and introductions to the programme. So I now take a midpoint pulse survey. I try to keep a little bit more regular contact with people on programme-wide scale, so we get an idea of how it's all going in the middle as well. And last year, we were really thrilled to find out that we won the ENCC award for the Best Mentoring Programme, which was just an absolute delight to be nominated for that. And we were so pleased to receive that award as well. So it's nice to have the recognition for what we're doing. But it's also nice to think about the sort of impacts that the programme has and the outcomes that are experienced by those who are participating. So we've talked a little bit about how we evaluate, and as Kay mentioned, we've got a little bit more detail to share with you now about some of the personal outcomes that are experienced. First of all, we're going to talk about our mentees, and then I'll talk about the personal experiences of the mentors as well. So these are some snapshots of data from our evaluation forms, and we ask our mentees, through thesis mentoring, I have improved, and they get to select as many that apply as well. And you can see that this programme is having a real impact in how people are feeling motivated, the positivity they're feeling to make progress with their thesis as well, but also their abilities to plan and manage writing as a project. But the things that I think are really nice to come out of it is that they understand a little bit more about themselves from being part of this programme. They understand more about how they work best, how they experience stress, and also strategies for dealing with that as well, which I think is a really crucial skill to take forward from beyond the PhD. On the right of the slide here, there's some quotes. We ask our part of our qualitative data collection is to ask our mentees, what are some of the most useful things you have learned through the experience of thesis mentoring? But you see that people are thinking about being more consistent rather than being perfect and waiting for those perfect moments and producing that perfect thesis as well. I really like the idea of looking at the thesis as a project that you can manage with milestones and deliverables, and that phrase of it's not a never-ending soup is quite a nice one. That feels like people are really, really stuck wading through that as well. But people are getting a lot of sort of the emotional support out of it, emotional understanding as well. So they're thinking about struggling at times is normal. It's completely fine to be going through a really challenging time, but that doesn't mean that through that experience you're not making progress as well. And also people are looking forward to the next step beyond the PhD and making that bridge through having that connection with someone who's been through the doctorate as well. Looking at some of the personal outcomes that are experienced by our mentors, you can see there's a very, very long list of them here. And it's the same sort of setup where our mentors are asked to select as many that apply to them. And not only are they building up skills and confidence in themselves as a mentor, they are saying that that is directly giving them more confidence in their future ability or their current ability to supervise students. So they're already translating what they're learning through this programme into their ability to supervise and understand what impacts the PGRs, what are those issues that they're facing as well. And I quite like the quote on the right there that came from one of our mentors recently, that they had almost forgotten what it was like during the first year of their PhD, how they feel generally clueless and not sure if you're doing things right, are you doing enough? And I think that's once you go through that thesis as well, it's easy to forget how lost you might feel as you first come into that as well. But it's not just about those direct sort of supervisory experiences that they're gaining through this. It's really nice to see that these mentors are feeling much more connected to other colleagues across the university. They increase their sense of job satisfaction, and they feel more valued overall as a member of staff because they have something to offer and share with others as well. This slide is really, really text heavy, but there's some really nice quotes that you might want to sit down and have a look at later on. But it's really nice to see that coming out of these interactions, mentors are thinking about how they can shape their approaches to being a supervisor and to adapt this to the individual supervisee, that individual PGR that they're working with. And also to think about how they go into that relationship to set up expectations with that PGR and the things that they might want to do from the offset to make sure that relationship goes on a really nice journey. So from this, I think that we're really building supervisors for the future who have quite a comprehensive skill set and think about their those that they supervise quite holistically as well, thinking about them as individuals, thinking about their future, thinking about how they might want to cultivate independent, successful researchers, as that quote ends on the right there, because they're looking at them more in a larger perspective than just writing that thesis. So it's a really valuable experience for the mentors and for the mentees as well. So I think we've kind of spoken then quite a lot about how thesis mentoring is a supportive partnership for both individuals within that relationship. And Kay's mentioned how we've utilised that to influence national professional frameworks through the UKCGE Associate Supervisor Award. But I'm just going to hand over to Kay shortly to talk us through how thesis mentoring can be a way to access and tap into the organisational curiosity, that inquiry and learning throughout our organisation. And we'll go a little bit deeper into how it reveals some of those dynamics of the hidden curriculum we were talking about earlier, and how ultimately it's a mechanism for culture change. Take it away, Kay.
Thank you. So you will have picked up from this, there's just so much data. There's just such a great wealth of organizational inquiry through mentoring and through the evaluations that takes place. And here's what some of our participants have said about that. But I think, we can apply this in all different ways, as well as building a mentoring program, as well as writing a book and creating toolkits. We've fed this very strongly back into our supervisor development framework overall. So not just for new supervisors, but we can run sessions, how to get your students to write their thesis, how to get your thesis writer unstuck, how to motivate students, how to set up learning as a skill from the outset. All of those different things have fed back into what we do. And not only that, but things like making sure that our postdocs at Glasgow can be recognised as supervisors formally on systems when we've got the evidence base to be able to show that they are already supervising and they should have that recognition for it. They can receive national awards for it. Actually, it helps to make a case for things like being able to put them onto official systems and record that contribution formally and recognize that otherwise invisible work that gets done there. So people in role like mine can be overlooked when it comes to having the relevant skills to support PhD students. This program has a pioneering spirit. Absolutely. We don't want them to be overlooked. There's just such a great wealth of work that goes on day to day. Thesis mentoring program or not, our research staff, our postdocs are doing all of this work anyway. And thesis mentoring has been a window that we can look through in order to visualize and recognize that. The act of putting it into direct practice open up a whole new world of ideas. So not just training, but actually going into a room with a stuck person and trying to figure that out in reality. That gap between I know something theoretically and I can apply that knowledge is going on. And we know that people are reflect on that and value that learning. Here, a whole change of style, less about making suggestions and more about asking questions. So we can see the impact of that mentoring approach being put into practice outside of the program as well. And we see this with all of our mentoring programs, that mentors who join a program and learn to do that skill within the program then also tell us that they apply it in lots of different ways, from their own research groups to in their small group teaching, for example, in their personal tutoring. It's a skill set that they value and use. I broaden my horizons on the vast array of research specializations, and I think more about cross-disciplinary avenues and new collaborations. And I think this is, perhaps one we never anticipated, but we do see that because we're working across disciplines, because that conversation can be had, we can find common ground, we can have that conversation, people broaden the boundaries, or let's say the disciplinary ties that bind them, and start thinking about other things that they can do as well. So a very nice side-along outcome there. Translated back into my own repertoire for supporting students. Another example of that there. Perfect. And then in terms of revealing the dynamics of the hidden curriculum, I spoke before, thesis writing is a hidden curriculum for so many people, and learning to supervise is a hidden curriculum for so many people. And this person has said, put the spotlight on the emotional labor of thesis writing and the mentee's relationship with writing and practical considerations. I think we do, especially within the sciences, tend to just write writing off as something that just happens. We've done all of the work, and now we just sit down and mechanically write it up without any sort of feelings-based connection to it, and really revealing that hidden side of it. We do need to think about how people feel about their writing, their relationship to their project, their relationship to, how confident they are in their data, their relationship to being okay with public scrutiny once the examiners get a look at what they've been working on. Is all going to tie into both their motivation and their capacity to move through the thesis. All my mentees have been part-time students, and it's improved their sense of belonging to the university. So not even so much about thesis writing itself, but just engagement. And we saw this before within that, within the mentor, the tick boxes that the mentors pick, they're more connected to the university. They feel more valued and more engaged as part of the university because they've done this thesis mentoring work that actively says, you can do this work, it's legit, and we thank you for it. Helps people to feel engaged in their job as well as within the program. So formal supervisors are not undermined by the mentor, but the pressure to be and do everything is taken off them. So really getting to the heart of this idea that we can expand the range and repertoire of the people who are able to support and guide students. It's not all on the supervisor. It's not all about them. But actually there's a supervisor hidden curriculum that they can let go, and they can trust somebody else to do this work as well. It's common to be recruited into academic positions without prior training and formal experience. Learn on the fly. Yeah, absolutely. We see that. We see it over and over again. And if you're that poor supervisor, that's hard. And if you're that poor student, that's really hard. For international students, it offers the opportunity to ask questions regarding UK and university-specific research culture and requirements, things that are massively enabling or disabling. The way that English language is used if it's an additional language, the way that academia works in the UK compared to prior experiences. All of that context can be unpicked and supported by a mentor as well. And then people who are traditionally disinclined to seek help do still reach out to thesis mentoring for help. Yeah, absolutely. Because we're not saying to people, if you're stressed, please come along and have some counseling or therapy. We're saying, if you're stressed, let's help you remove the cause of that stress rather than treat it. So whilst counseling and therapy are absolutely brilliant and vital tools and techniques for personal self-governance, management, for understanding who you are and how you react to the world, actually, if we've got something here that's a known stress, which is the thesis, we can work on that as well. And what we've always said to people is thesis mentoring is a complement to counseling and therapeutic work. It's absolutely possible and desirable, in fact, to be doing both kinds of work, but to know the boundaries between the two is really key. And finally, to get to this kind of idea of a mechanism for culture change, because just recognizing that there is an emotional side to writing is a culture change, right? Just recognizing that postdocs do an awful lot of work to support supervision, even if they're not recognized for it and it's not part of their formal job, is a change in our culture as well. So the positive effect, I've seen cultural change that's come as a result. Supervisory practice has improved because the mentees, as well as the mentors, went on to become supervisors themselves and better equipped to support their students. Making sure that things that we do are open and openly accessible, like this session today, helping people to adopt these practices and also to create this kind of more sector-wide change. The approach there, breaking down barriers between academic staff and professional services, much needed. So being able to welcome people who have PhDs who are in professional services as mentors and teaching them how to coach and teaching them how to work with stuck writers, not only useful for their job, but they get to be seen on a similar status to other people as well. Supervisors feeling that they've got backup, that someone's got their back, that somebody is able to take a load, and making sure that they're not just sitting there feeling like it's all on them. And the mental skill program isn't static. It shifts from cycle to cycle. So that kind of the cycles of listening, of responding to feedback, of iterating the program's development based on what they've told us as well, has all been part of that. So I would say if you're looking for something that's low cost, high impact, you probably can't go wrong with thesis mentoring. And I would love to see lots more thesis mentoring programs come through. Our takeaway points from today, I know I've got a couple of questions in the chat as well, which Elaine and I will come on to answer before we give you a chance to have a chat. But I would say everyone benefits. It is at the same time support and development and a way of learning. It's an investigative tool as well as a supportive tool. But what you do with that learning really matters. Look for places to deploy it. You might want to make a policy change. You might want to update the PGR code of practice. You might want to make sure your supervisors get recognized. Might want to help people think about these more expanded pedagogies for doctoral development. I think that really top and key learning is that postdocs are uniquely placed to support PGR writing. We haven't talked in depth about it today. I've got a whole other talk, which is about why postdocs aren't just kind of supervisor minor or supervisor junior. They're actually doing something very unique that supervisors can't do because they don't have that same power over the thesis writer that the supervisor has. You have to come to a different talk if you want to know all about that. And final takeaway is that a formal program can reveal and provide access to two types of hidden curricula for supervisors and for writers as well.